working in health tech and biotech, and eventually just became very versed in the early stage startup ecosystem and bounced around to about 9 different startups.
Culturally in Asia, when you tell your parents, I am not going to be a doctor, it's a big news.
Right.
How was it when you informed your parents about your decision?
We still ended up doing a lot of the work ourselves, making a lot of the decisions, and that took up a lot of time. So there's other investment banks like mine that look out for these companies that are 3, 4, 5 years away from having an exit, and they there's different ways of doing pre-IPO investing. Like, well, the risks of pre-IPO investing, I would say, are fairly low. I would say the only risks are there's market risks.
How old are you here?
I think probably about 5 or 6.
So is it in America or India? What are the changes from, say, 6 years old to 17 and to most recent of you?
Some of the early investments we did were, I would say, angel investments. They were early stage ventures, and we just lost all our money, you know? One of the AI women founders has been able to get 200 customers already, and one of the judges asked her, you know, how did you do that? You're an early stage company, you haven't even raised Series A, how do you have 200 customers? Use these kind of like innovative techniques to make your money stretch as far as you can, so you can go as far as you can and then raise that next round and then raise the next round to keep growing, you know? Well, a founder's pitch, I would say the product market fit.
What type of team do you wish to see when you invest?
What is your dream as a femigrant, as a female immigrant? What is your dream for yourself and for your children in this country?
Hi, my name is Aytekin, welcoming you from Verso Talk podcast. Verso means unseen and untold. The main goal of this podcast is to tell untold stories of immigrant women leaders and also educate immigrants on investment, fundraising, and everything related to money to help them become financially free leaders in America. Our guest today is Shoba. She's a femigrant, female immigrant from India, and she's an advisor investor. Shoba, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Aytekin.
Thank you, Shoba, joining the podcast today. I am very excited to learn more about your experience and getting your advice on investment and fundraising, helping immigrant women founders and anybody who wants to join the investment world. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Aytekin. My name is Shoba Viswanath. I'm a femigrant from India, like Aytekin said, and I immigrated to the U.S. when I was 5 years old. And I originally lived in Houston, Texas, then moved to the Bay Area at 12, went to junior high school, college at Berkeley. I was in biochemistry major, went on to medical school in North Carolina, then decided about halfway through medical school that it really wasn't for me, so moved back to Silicon Valley, and the tech ecosystem was really starting to boom in the 90s, early 2000s. So I started working in health tech and biotech, and eventually just became very versed in the early stage startup ecosystem and bounced around to about 9 different startups, everything from fintech, mobility tech, health tech. So I became quite familiar with early stage startup growth, everything from seed to Series A.
Thank you, Shoba. So you said that when you were studying at a medical school, you realized that it was not for you. I know from different Femigrants community members that culturally in Asia, when you tell your parents, I am not going to be a doctor, it's a big news.
Right.
How was it when you informed your parents about your decision?
Well, my parents actually were different in that they didn't really want me to go to medical school in the first place. Like they both came from the corporate world. Like I said, I came as a child. So my parents both spent their careers at PG&E in the corporate world. And they really saw the medical profession as taking too many years to get to a place where you're actually working and making a salary. And they knew the process would be grueling, but I kind of convinced them that I really wanted to go. But then I started having some health issues, et cetera, when I was in medical school, and they kind of agreed with me that it really wasn't worth it, and that there were other opportunities for me, and it really wasn't worth it.
It's great that you were supported by parents. It's so important.
Right.
Kids, they refuse to chase their dreams because they don't get parent support. Do you think that it played a vital role for you to be where you are now?
Oh yeah, that was probably the biggest turning point of my career. I mean, of my life, because I was in my late 20s when I made that transition from medicine to tech. So that's kind of that was kind of the biggest turning point, because going into medicine, most of my friends who I have from medical school are practicing physicians now, because once you're in that world, that's your whole world, and they're all pretty much, and I'm kind of the only one I know that's branched out and did other things, and so really that was the turning point and the start of everything that would become, You
entered to the tech world and later you transitioned to investment.
Right.
Right. So please tell me about that transition. How was it to make a transition into the world that is dominated by males?
Right. Well, I think one thing is that I have a sister that I'm very close to, and she's a pretty successful attorney. And when I was in the East Coast, leaving medical school and considering different options, she was working in Washington, D.C. as an attorney. And early on, I would say in my early 30s, she wanted to do some investing. She had a lot of money. I had more time. And so we started our investing journey very early. I would say we made some mistakes. We invested in different ventures. There was a real estate venture we got into in Florida. There were a few other ventures that I would say that didn't really pay out. But eventually, when I moved back to the Bay Area, I got into tech. We started tech investing, and we've just put a little bit of money here and there. And eventually our portfolio has grown, and a few of the companies, few of the startups that I was with had early stage exits that allowed me to create a little nest egg for myself too. So I started investing as well. Yeah.
You said that you made a couple of, maybe I would say, lessons that you learned, not mistakes.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn?
Well, the lessons I learned were basically that you really have to do your due diligence, and that you also have to understand how much time an investment is going to take, because I would say a lot of the investments I make now are managed by other people. Like I work with an investment bank, so they tell me the companies that I'm going to be investing in, but as far as the due diligence, the follow-up paperwork, a lot of that is handled by them, And when I was in real estate investing, it took up a lot of our time because we were the owners. Even if we trusted the management of the properties to other management companies, we still ended up doing a lot of the work ourselves, making a lot of the decisions, and that took up a lot of time. And so it's really, when you make an investment, you have to realize, and some companies that you make an investment in, they give you a board position, for example. You have to kind of understand the time commitment that it's going to take to be in any kind of investment, in addition to the risk involved as well, because in every investment there's risk, but we've learned to invest with less risk as well.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you learned the lessons that later helped you to manage your time differently and not to maybe join all boards that you invest to the companies. To any immigrant woman who wants to start investment, what do they need to know to avoid the mistakes or lessons that they can learn through experience?
Right. Well, I think there's different kinds of investments, right? There's the investing in yourself. There's if you're starting your own company and you're putting your own money into yourself because you believe in yourself enough that you think you're going to create something. That could be something because if it's a success, you only have yourself to. You can congratulate yourself, and if it's a failure for any reason, you can blame yourself. So at the end of the day, I think there's different ways to invest. You can invest in yourself, but if you're investing in other people's companies, other investment platforms, I would say if you have a lot of money to invest, or if you've raised a fund, then you can think about early stage investments. But in general, a lot of early stage investments carry more risk. So unless you've created enough wealth that you can really allocate your money in a lot of different investments, I would say go toward later stage investments that are companies that already have traction, that already are doing 10, 20, 50, $100 million in revenue. And the chances of them having an exit and that you'll get multiplies on your initial investment are a lot higher.
If I'm not mistaken, you are investing on pre-IPO startups, right?
Yeah.
Is this the only startup you invest, or are there any other type of?
I do some early stage as well. Yeah, I've done some bridge investing, some early stage as well.
What type of companies for early stages?
I've invested in one early stage fintech company. I knew the founder. I've worked with him about 12, 13 years ago. So I knew him. That was a personal connection. I've also been a part of some crowdfunding campaigns. Those are early stage, but I like those because there's no minimum in how much you have to invest. And so you can take your chances. And one called Sky Quarry that I invested through a crowdfunding campaign through WeFunder is going public, actually. It's an asphalt recycling company.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, and my investment in it was small. I mean, because crowdfunding is kind of the way they do it is they publicize it and you get to know it through investment advisors. And they get thousands of people to invest, and then they raise millions, and then they go from there, and if it's a success, it's a success. So I've been part of several crowdfunding campaigns as well. Yes.
Awesome. And congratulations on that.
Oh, thanks.
That's great.
Yeah.
So can you please walk us through the pre-IPO investment process?
Yeah. So pre-IPO investing, basically what it means is that you're investing in a company that is later stage, and I would say Series C or Series D. They already have a lot of traction, a lot of revenue, $50, $100 million in revenue already, and they're anywhere from 5 to 7 years away from going public or having a big exit, And I've done most of my pre-IPO investing through an investment bank called Laidlaw. But like my investment bank, there are other investment banks who do the same thing. My investment bank is very entrenched in Silicon Valley. So they really know what's going on in Silicon Valley, and they really know the companies that are really companies like ThoughtSpot and Databricks. And I had some pre-IPO exits with Airbnb and Robinhood. And they really have their pulse on the companies that are going to do really well, And so there's other investment banks like mine that look out for these companies that are 3, 4, 5 years away from having an exit. And there's different ways of doing pre-IPO investing. Like I do it through an LLC where I become a limited partner in several LLCs, and the LLCs contain shares of different companies. And these shares are usually bought on the secondary market from employees who work in those companies who want to sell some of their shares before the exit. So that's one way to do it. But there's other ways to do it as well. Where there's other formats where you can buy preferred shares, and there's bankers who sell preferred shares, and they're not quite in the same format, but you can do that as well. And now there's actually apps. I think Linkto is one. There's another one. It's not coming off the top of my head. But there's other ones as well where you can online for lesser amounts, like through the investment banks. They usually have like $100,000 minimum that you have to do, but through some of these apps, you can actually invest much smaller amounts into these late stage companies. And it's great, if you can put 25,000 into OpenAI or one of these great companies that you feel like has a bright future, So, yeah.
Let's talk about also the risks before pre-IPO. What are the risks when you do investment pre-IPO or buy stocks?
The risks of pre-IPO investing, I would say, are fairly low. I would say the only risks are there's market risks in that if the stock market is really booming, then when a company has an IPO, the stock, when it's released, could be released at a really good price. Then you can make a really big multiple on your initial investment. If the stock market is lagging or it's kind of a downturn like we've had the last few years, actually, it hasn't been the ideal market for stocks to come IPO. Couple things can happen. Sometimes companies will just wait it out and wait for the stock market to kind of be booming again before they do an IPO, or they'll do an IPO when the stock market isn't booming, but it'll be at a lower valuation and a lower price, And in that case, you just don't make as much return. You might not even make any return. I mean, you won't lose your money, but you might just make what you put in back, and your money has been tied up with this investment for possibly a few years to several years, and you might make nothing back, But if it's a good solid company and the stock market is doing really well and the IPO at a good price, then the chances are that it's going to do really well.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now let's talk about your personal journey.
Yeah.
You said that you moved here when you were 5 years old.
Right.
Do you remember anything from your childhood before that time back in India?
I remember I have like slight memories that go through my head. We lived in Delhi. My dad was an engineer in Delhi. And I have a few memories from my childhood. Yeah. And my grandparents had a house close by, and I remember we'd go visit our grandparents sometimes. And so I have a few vague memories. And then I also have, because the first international flight I took was when I was moving to America at 5 years age. So I remember being on that. It was a Pan Am flight, Pan Am jet that we flew. And I remember being on the airplane coming from India to America, and at 5 you really don't know like what you're getting into or what to expect, you know, but you just know that you're like your parents are telling you that you're going to a new place and that you're going to have a new life, you know. So it's kind of it was kind of fun riding on a plane, you know, at 5 years old. So
so I have here your childhood picture. I want to show it on the screen.
Okay.
How old are you here?
I think probably about 5 or 6.
So is it in America or India?
This is America.
Okay. Do you remember this day?
I don't remember that day, but I think it's probably like Sears or something, given the background. I think they used to, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have like these photo studios in the Sears that you could go and you go and sit your child there, and then they have different backgrounds you can choose. So given the background, I'm thinking it was probably a Sears photo or something, you know?
So and here, how old are you here?
Probably 16 or 17.
Okay, so what are the changes from say 6 years old to 17 and to most recent of you?
Yeah. So, so when I first came to America, like when I was 5, I didn't speak I spoke very little English, you know, but I learned English really fast. And I adjusted to American culture. I would say by the time I was in high school, I had pretty much become an Indian American. I would say when I first came from India, I was Indian, but by high school, I was an Indian American, you know? And I had, all my friends were American. A lot of my friends were Caucasian usually. I had learned from them, like, what the customs were. I mean, like in India, it's not very customary to date and things like that. Like my parents had an arranged marriage, but I learned from my friends that it's okay, even in junior high or high school, to start having boyfriends and things like that. And I was kind of a little cautious with that because I know my parents didn't really approve of things like that. But I learned a lot of those things from my school group and my social groups and my friends. So I would say by the time I was in high school, I was pretty inculcated with the American culture and American food and American. Even though I was vegetarian, I was, you know, I started eating pizza and all the things and going to parties and the different things. So I was pretty much inculcated, you know, and then I would say up to now, you know, from high school to now has been a huge journey. In high school, all I was thinking is I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor because I would say in the 1980s, when I was in high school, I lived in Walnut Creek. My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. And the only successful people I saw around me in Walnut Creek were doctors, you know, and I saw my parents had a reasonably successful life, but they had some struggles. Like my dad lost his job a couple of times before he got hired at PG&E. And so seeing them and the corporate struggles that they had, I just thought, you know, well, being a doctor is not only makes you successful, but it's also a stable career. You don't have to worry about losing your job. And then it's also a way to give back and not be in the corporate world. And so I saw many advantages of that. So that's all I was thinking, like in high school. I mean, I just have to do well. I just have to get good grades so I can get into a good college. And then in college, it was all about just getting good grades so I can get into med school. And then med school. And then until I had that major pivot in my late 20s to get out of med school and get into tech, that was all my life. You know, it was just like how to become a doctor, how to keep doing the next thing to become a doctor, you know, and that was all that was trained in my mind. And then when I got into tech, then it was when I threw myself into tech, it was kind of like, forget about all that. I've been training myself for the last 15 years and just start learning everything I can about tech, how to do product management, how to talk with development teams, how to do product market strategy, how to talk to customers, you know, all that early stage startups need to do are completely different skills. but I ended up having a lot more fun doing that than what I was doing in medical school.
Interesting.
You know?
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So when you look back at your younger self, what are you grateful for?
Well, I mean, I'm grateful that my parents gave me enough stability and enough groundedness. Like I don't specifically think of myself as very religious now, but when I was raised with the Hindu religion. And one thing about that is that it makes you kind of think that you need to be a good person in your life and create value to the world and do something good for the world, you know? And I think I'm also grateful that my parents took me back to India a lot while I was growing up, so I could see how much better my life was here versus how people lived in India. And I really was like, you know, how can I make myself successful enough that I can give back to India someday? Because I'm so lucky that my parents brought me here, you know?
You know, sometimes we discuss the same thing with my husband.
Yeah.
We tell that we should take our kids back to our country.
Yeah.
So they value what they have.
Yeah.
Because when you are born with these things, it becomes natural to you.
Yeah.
For us, we don't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
So your parents might feel very resonated with my story because we start at the middle of our career, we leave everything behind, and then come here, start from scratch, etc. Right. So I like how you brought up that taking our kids back to our country. Yeah, it really helps to the children to better understand and value what they have. Yeah, and you said that you go back to India, but I know that you also do social impact related projects back in India.
Yeah, that had started recently. I used to go back to India every 4 or 5 years while I was growing up. And then even as a young adult in my 20s, 30s, I would go back every 4 or 5 years to visit grandparents or visit aunts and uncles. But it's very recently in the last 4 years that I've gotten involved with a nonprofit which supports children's education in India. And through that nonprofit, I've started going to India every year and visiting. We support hundreds of NGOs on the ground that promote children's education for impoverished children. So I go to India every year to visit several of our projects. And that's been very eye-opening and life-changing as well, because when I went to India to visit when I went to visit India all through growing up to visit relatives and stuff, it's one thing to stay with your relatives and you see some poor people on the street here and there, but it's another thing to actually be involved in this nonprofit work, and they take you to these villages where, you know, they have a problem with even getting enough water. It's a really like water shortage or growing crops, and it's very hard for them to get any kind of medical care, and the kids have no access to school, so they bring the schools to them. And being kind of entrenched in this kind of nonprofit work kind of opens my eyes a lot more to what's going on there, you know?
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
So you travel around the world. You visited Azerbaijan, Georgia, Scotland. These are the countries I remember you said. Uh-huh. So I'm sure that it was a business-related trip where you met with startup founders, investors, right?
Right. So Scotland was all business related. We met with accelerators, other investors, as well as startups, and learned a lot about the startup ecosystem. It was put on by this organization called Sustainable Alpha in partnership with Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish government. So they got a group of investors, many from Europe, many from America, together, and we traveled around Scotland for a week. It was a very intense week. We met with a lot of accelerators. but I felt like I got to know the Scotland ecosystem a lot more. And I also became the other investors that I traveled the world, traveled Scotland with, we all became really close, like a family. And so I feel like I can reach out to those investors anytime also. So we had formed really close relationships, And then in Baku was amazing because they hosted the United Nations Climate COP conference this year. And I was lucky enough to be invited through some connections to give some speeches there at the COP conference. And I was hosted by an Azeri family there. And they own a lot of properties there, etc. So a couple of American friends who also spoke in the COP conference, and I were hosted there, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful being a part of COP, being a part of the United Nations. I had never been to a conference that happens on a world scale, and these United Nations conference, these World Health conferences, like Davos. These conferences are huge and world conferences, and I'd never been to something like that. So it was happening on kind of an immense scale, and I also didn't know too much about Azerbaijan. So so seeing how quickly it's developing and seeing how quickly they're trying to bring investment, and there's also a startup ecosystem there. And the family that was hosting me, the daughter, she's creating an app that I'm kind of helping her with as an advisor. So so there's a lot of investment and startup ecosystem there, and then same with Georgia as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
As a woman investor advisor, traveling around the world, coming back to Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Did you bring new ideas with you? What is missing here that you experienced in those countries you traveled?
Well, what I think is missing here is that, especially with the current, I don't want to get into politics, with the current administration, trying to separate being very nationalistic. And I mean, we live in one world, and the world is becoming smaller and smaller. And most of the big tech companies here hire talent from Eastern Europe, India. It's all common now. So they have employees all over the world that are working for them. So to divide ourselves and say that we're only America and that we're only going to do things because we're America and we're so... Other countries are catching up very fast, and we need to learn that. And other countries have a lot of brain power, and they're going to be creative in how they grow as well. And I think in India right now, there's still a lot of poverty, but I think we're going to see a lot of change in the next decade or two. They're catching up, and in other countries as well. So I think it helps. I'd like to think of myself as a global citizen, and traveling a couple months a year helps me feel that way, helps me kind of feel like I'm living in other countries as well. And someday I'd like to even spend more time in other countries.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So what do you know now that adds so much value to you that you wished you knew 5 or 10 years ago? 5 years ago, 10 is too many years. So
something I know now that I wish I knew 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Something I know now that I wish I knew 5 years ago is that there are ways to help companies because I would say 5 years ago was kind of when the pandemic started. And up to the point that the pandemic started, I was working at different startups and trying everything, giving it all I had, giving it 50, 60 hours a week to trying to make the startup I was working for grow. And I was tied to the success of those startups and thought the best way to make money was to help those companies that I was working for grow. And now I've kind of actually realized in the last 5 years that if I can be a smart investor and take the money that I have and focus more on growing that money, that can actually make me more successful than just spending all my time chugging the wheels and not going anywhere with the startups.
So does a smart investor mean spending less time, being less involved to the company growth, or is there anything you would like to add when you say smart investor?
Well, I mean, I think it's different being involved as an advisor and using, I think all that operational experience at all those different startups was very valuable. So I won't say that I should have never done that because having all those operational experience, when I meet a new founder, I've already done a lot of the things they're doing. So when they have a question, I can answer it very fast. And in a very short amount of time, I can add a lot of value to what they're trying to create, But I wouldn't have that if I didn't have that experience. So I don't say I don't wish I didn't have that. What I'm saying is now I've just learned that value creation I can do it in a different way. I can do it by mentorship and do it by coaching and do it by investing,
See.
So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So Shoba, please tell me about your experience when you decided to pivot to IPO or pause more on angel investment and do pre-IPO.
Yeah. I wouldn't say there was ever a pivot to pre-IPO from angel investing. I would just say that some of the early investments we did were I would say angel investments because they were early stage ventures, and we just lost all our money, And I think if you're really careful and you really believe in a founder, I would say it's not that it doesn't have to happen to everybody. And some people do early stage investing and make 1,000x return because there's a really great founder and the company really takes off. There has to be a lot of factors. But for us, when we had losses, we just realized it was safer. Even though the growth of the money would be slower, we realized it would just be safer to do pre-IPO.
What were the red flags at that time? You didn't realize that later you lost money.
Well, I think red flags is that we were really trusting, and I've always been really trusting of people. And
did you know them in person, like personally, before investing?
Personally, yeah. And I would say some of the founders of the companies, the things they told me, I just believed them, and I just didn't really do a lot of due diligence and really figure out if it's something that could work out. And I just believed what the founder told me, and then it ended up not working out, so.
Didn't work out because the idea wasn't great or the founder failed? What were the reasons?
Well, one investment specifically, I would say didn't work out because there was some other follow-up investment that was supposed to come on through that never came through. So once they ran out of resources, the company kind of disillusioned. There was also some problems with actual operations and logistics of the business. So I would say it wasn't necessarily the founder, except that the founder had not had any previous experience in doing something like that. And then there were other factors that came to play as well.
I see. What are your recommendations to founders who are raising funds?
Well, to founders that are raising funds, I would say don't take it lightly that you're taking investment from someone who's giving you their money. I would say use it very responsibly. I went to a women founders event just a few nights ago, and there were a lot of AI women founders there. And one of the AI women founders has been able to get 200 customers already. And one of the judges asked her, how did you do that? You're an early stage company. You haven't even raised Series A. How do you have 200 customers? and they have 10 Berkeley interns working for them, and she's like, we really leverage the use of our interns more than more companies do, So I would say just like be really prudent with how you use your money and be really diligent, like, just take it seriously. And the investor also will understand that you really have some milestones that you're trying to achieve, and that you're going to keep raising money, and that you're going to keep growing the company, and that they're not going to lose their money, and that you're going to do everything in your power to make it work, and use these kind of like innovative techniques to make your money stretch as far as you can, so you can go as far as you can, and then raise that next round, and then raise the next round to keep growing,
When founders pitch, what are the 3 main checkboxes you check?
Well, a founder's pitch, I would say the product market fit, I would say the team, and I would say traction.
What about the culture of the team or personality of the founder? Do you take it into consideration?
Yeah, that's part of the team. Yeah.
Part of the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the team is understanding the team, like who they are as people, have they known each other before? My nephew, for example, has a very successful unicorn company right now. And he and his co-founder had a previous company before this that they ran for 10 years. They have a 15, 20-year relationship of knowing each other. They were Stanford graduate school roommates. So the personalities of the co-founders, the personalities of the early employees, how well they're going to gel together and really make something grow. That's really important.
Was there a time when you refused to invest because of the team? Idea was great, traction was great, but the team was not there.
Well, like I said, I don't do that many early stage investments anymore.
Do you think that investors do it? Because all 3 has to be there. If idea is great, right, and they already have traction, but the team is shaky.
Yeah, I would say more and more investors are putting more and more importance on the team versus everything else. Yeah, the more and more investors that I hear from these days are putting more and more importance on the team. Yeah.
So can you please clarify what do you consider when you say the team is a high priority? What type of team do you wish to see when you invest?
Well, I think I would say, let me speak for investors in general, since I don't do that many early stage investments. But I think investors are looking for founders who may have a background in the specific market that they're going into. So either educational background or work background. They have some history of the knowledge base that they're going to, or the market that they're going to after. They have some advantage over another founder over that market space. So their expertise is one thing. And do the expertise of the key founders kind of gel with each other? Is there one technical person? Is there one business person? Is there one really good at raising money? Is there like a really key team whose skill sets kind of jive with each other to make a company really grow fast, And I think there's the previous expertise as well as the expertise that the founders have that'll make them gel and work together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
We are almost ending our show. And as a format of this podcast, you can ask me one question.
Okay.
But I recommend not to ask what is the goal of Verso Talk, because I have already answered to ask questions, people will see it. Yeah. So any questions you would like to ask me?
Oh, sure. What is your dream as a Femigrant?
As a founder of Femigrants Foundation, or as a host of the Verso Talk.
No, just what is your dream as a femigrant, as a female immigrant? What is your dream for yourself and for your children in this country?
This is great. So for my children is to leave my footprint, that when they talk about their mom or recall memories, they see that their mom built a community, made something impacting lives, and they get inspired. So they learn from their moms that their mom never gave up, no matter how challenging situation I faced at some time. So also they become bold leaders, successful leaders, happy girls and women in the future. So these are my dreams, to raise happy, bold, powerful girls and future women in life.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We are ending. Is there anything you would like to add as a suggestion or advice to immigrant founders?
To immigrant founders, especially in today's day and age, I would say don't give up. I would say being an entrepreneur is a very important part of our economy, part of the world economy. And there can be challenges. There can be visa challenges, especially coming to America. There can be immigration challenges, visa challenges. But if you have the vision, don't give up and do whatever you can to make it work. Because if it's going to work anywhere in the world, you have the best chances of making it work here. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was such a nice pleasure to have you at our podcast. And thank you all for watching us. Today our guest was Shoba. She is an advisor, investor, and a femigrant from India. Thank you.
Thank you.